All right, welcome to our next day of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So we are in the middle of chapter 5 called Diagon Alley, where Harry and Hagrid are traveled to this other world and they're about to walk into Gringotts, which is the bank, the wizarding bank, and it's guarded by goblins. So that is where we left off, page 73. Like I said, you'd be mad to try and rob it, said Hagrid. A pair of goblins bowed them through the silver doors, and then they were in a vast marble hall. About 100 more goblins were sitting on high stools behind a long counter, scribbling in large ledgers, weighing coins and brass scales, examining precious stones through eyeglasses. There were too many doors to count leading off the hall, and yet more goblins were showing people in and out of there. Hagrid and Harry made for the counter. "Morning," said Hagrid to a free goblin. "We've come to take some money out for from Mr. Harry Potter's safe." "You have his key, sir." "Got it here somewhere," said Hagrid, and he started emptying his pockets onto the counter, scattering a handful of moldy dog biscuits over the goblin's book of numbers. The goblin wrinkled his nose. Harry watched the goblin on their right weighing a pile of rubies as big as gallowing coals. "Got it," said Hagrid at last, holding up a tiny golden key. The goblin looked at it closely. "That seems to be in order." "And I've got a letter here from Professor Dumbledore," said Hagrid importantly, throwing out his chest. "It's about the you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin read the letter carefully. "Very well," he said, handing it back to Hagrid. "I will have someone take you down to the vaults. Griphook!" Griphook was yet another goblin. Once Hagrid had crammed all the dog biscuits back inside his pockets, he and Harry followed Griphook towards one of the doors leading off the hallway. "What's the you-know-what in Vault 713? Harry asked. "Can't tell you that," said Hagrid mysteriously. "Very secret Hogwarts business. Dumbledore's trusted me. More in my job's worth to tell you that." Griphook held the door open for them. Harry, who had expected more marble, was surprised. They were in a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downward, and there was a little railway track on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks towards them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and they were off. At first, they just hurtled through a maze of twisting passages. Harry tried to remember. Left, right, left, middle fork, right, left, but it was impossible. The rattling cart seemed to know its own way because Griphook wasn't steering. Harry's eyes stung as the cold air rushed past them, but he kept them wide open. Once he thought he saw a burst of fire at the end of the passage and twisted around to see if it was a dragon, but too late. They plunged even deeper, passing an underground lake where huge stalactites and stalagmites grew from the ceiling and floor. "I never know," Harry called to Hagrid over the noise of the cart. "What's the difference between a stalagmite and a stalactite?" "Stalagmite's got an M in it," said Hagrid. "And don't ask me questions just now. I think I'm gonna be sick." He did look very green, and when the cart stopped at last beside a small door in the passage wall, Hagrid got out and had to lean against the wall to stop his knees from trembling. Griphook unlocked the door. A lot of green smoke came billowing out as it cleared. Harry gasped. Inside were mounds of gold coins, columns of silver, heaps of little bronze knuts. "All yours," smiled Hagrid. "All Harry's. It was incredible. The Dursleys couldn't have known about this, or they'd have had it from them much faster than they could blink. How often had they complained about how much Harry cost them to keep? And all the time there was been a small fortune belonging to him buried deep under London." Hagrid helped Harry pile some of it into a bag. "The gold ones are galleons," he explained. 17 silver sickles to a galleon, and 29 knuts to a sickle. It's easy enough, right? Right. That should be enough for a couple of terms. We'll keep the rest safe for you." He turned to Griphook. "Vault 713 now, please. And can we move a little slowly?" "Only one speed," said Griphook. So it sounds like Hagrid's getting scared of this roller coaster. They were going even deeper now and gathering speed. The air became colder and colder as they hurtled around tight corners. They went rattling over an underground ravine, and Harry leaned over the side to see what was down at the dark bottom, but Hagrid groaned and pulled him back up by the scuff of his neck. Vault 713 had no keyhole. "Stand back," said Griphook importantly. He struck the door gently with one of his long fingers, and it simply melted away. "If anyone but a Gringotts goblin tried that, they'd be sucked through the door and trapped inside," said Griphook. "How often do you check to see if anyone's inside?" said Harry. "About once every 10 years, said Griphook with a rather nasty grin. Something really extraordinary had to be inside this top-secret vault. Harry was sure, and he leaned forward eagerly, expecting to see fabulous jewels at the very least, but at first he thought it was empty. Then he noticed a grubby little package wrapped up in brown paper lying on the floor. Hagrid picked it up and tucked it in deep inside his coat. Harry longed to know what it was, but knew better than to ask. "Come on, back in this infernal cart, and don't talk to me on the way back. It's best if I keep my mouth shut," said Hagrid. One wild cart ride later, and they stood blinking in the sunlight outside Gringotts. Harry didn't know where to run first, now that he had a bag full of money. He didn't have to know how many galleons there were to a pound to know that he was holding more money than he'd ever had in his whole life, more money than even Dudley ever had. "Might as well get your uniform," said Hagrid, nodding towards Madame Malfic's robes for all occasions. "Listen, Harry, would you mind if I slipped off and picked me up at the Leaky Cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts." He did still look a bit sick, so Harry entered Madame Malfic's shop alone, feeling nervous. Madame Malfic was a squat, smiling witch dressed all in mauve. "Hogwarts, dear," she said when Harry started to speak. "Got the lot here, another young man being fitted up just now, in fact." In the back of the shop, a boy with pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool, while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Madame Malkin stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. "Hello," said the boy. "Hogwarts, too?" "Yes," said Harry. "My father's next door buying my books, and mother's up the street looking at wands," said the boy. He had a bored, drawling voice. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one, and I'll smuggle it in somehow." Harry was strongly reminded of Dudley. "Have you gotten your own broom?" the boy went on. "No," said Harry. "Play Quidditch at all?" "No," Harry said again, wondering what on earth Quidditch could be. "I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say I agree. Know what house you'll be in yet?" "No," said Harry, feeling more stupid by the minute. "Well, no one really knows until they get there, do they? But I know I'll be Slytherin. All my family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you?" Said Harry, wishing he could say something a bit more interesting. "I say, look at that man," said the boy suddenly, nodding towards the front window. Hagrid was standing there grinning at Harry and pointing at 2 large ice creams to show he couldn't come in. "That's Hagrid," said Harry, pleased to know something the boy didn't. "He works at Hogwarts." "Oh," said the boy, "I've heard of him. He's sort of a servant, isn't he?" "He's the gamekeeper," said Harry. He was liking the boy less and less every second. "Yes, exactly. I heard he's sort of a savage. Lives in a hut on the school grounds, and every now and then he gets drunk, tries to do magic, and ends up setting fire to his bed." "I think he's brilliant," said Harry coldly. "Do you?" said the boy with a slight sneer. "Why is he with you? Where are your parents?" "They're dead," Harry said shortly. He didn't feel much like going into the matter with the boy. "Oh, sorry," said the other, not sounding sorry at all. "But they were our kind, weren't they?" "They were a witch and wizard, if that's what you mean." "I really don't think they should let the other sort in, do you? They're just not the same. They've never been brought up to know our ways. Some of them have never heard of Hogwarts until they get the letter in the mail. Imagine. I think they should keep it all in the old wizarding families. What's your surname, anyway?" So he's asking him what his last name is. But before Harry could answer, Madame Malkin said, "That's you done, my dear," said Harry, not sorry for an excuse to stop talking to the boy, hopped down from the footstool. "Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose," said the drawling boy. Harry was rather quiet as he ate his ice cream. Hagrid had brought with him chocolate and raspberry with chopped nuts. "What's up?" said Hagrid. "Nothing," Harry lied. They stopped to buy parchment and quills. Harry cheered up a bit when he found a bottle of ink that changed colors as you wrote. When they left the shop, he said, "Hagrid, what's Quidditch?" "Blimey, Harry, I keep forgetting how little you know. Not knowing about Quidditch." "Don't make me feel worse," said Harry. He told Hagrid about the pale boy and Madame Malkix. And he said people from Muggle families shouldn't even be allowed in. "You're not from a Muggle family. If he'd known who you were, he'd grown up knowing your name if his parents are wizarding folk. You saw what everybody in the Leaky Cauldron was like when they saw you. Anyway, what does he know about it? Some of the best I ever saw were the only ones with magic in them, a long line of muggles. Look at your mom. Look at what she had for a sister." "So what is Quidditch?" "It's our sport. A wizarding sport. It's like soccer in the Muggle world. Everyone follows Quidditch. Played up in the air on broomsticks, and there's 4 balls. Sort of hard to explain the rules." "And what are Slytherin and Hufflepuff?" "School houses. There's 4. Everyone says Hufflepuffs are a lot of duffers, but..." "I bet I'm a Hufflepuff," said Harry gloomily. "Better Hufflepuff than Slytherin," said Hagrid darkly. "There's not a single witch or wizard who went bad who wasn't in Slytherin. You know who was one. Sorry. You know who was at Hogwarts? Years and years ago," said Hagrid. They bought Harry's school books in a shop called Florius and Bolts, where their shelves were stacked to the ceilings with books and large paving stones bound in leather. Books the size of postage stamps and covers of silk. Books full of peculiar symbols and a few books with nothing in them at all. Even Dudley, who had never read anything, would have been wild to get his hands on some of these. Hagrid had almost had to drag Harry away from curses and counter-curses, bewitch your friends and befuddle your enemies with the latest revenges, hair loss, jelly legs, tongue-tying, and much, much more, by Professor Vindictus Verdurian. I was trying to find how to curse Dudley. I'm not saying that's not a good idea, but you're not to use magic in the Muggle world except in very special circumstances, said Hagrid. And anyway, you couldn't work any of them curses yet. You'll need a lot more study before you can get to that level. Hagrid wouldn't let Harry buy a solid gold cauldron either. It says pewter on your list. But they got a nice set of scales for weighing potion ingredients and a collapsible brass telescope. Then they visited the apothecary, which was fascinating enough to make up for its horrible smell, a mixture of bad eggs and rotted cabbages. Barrels of slimy stuff stood on the floor. Jars of herbs, dried roots, and bright powders lined the walls. Bundles of feathers, strings, and fangs, and snarled claws hung from the ceilings. While Hagrid asked the man behind the counter for a supply of some basic potion ingredients for Harry, Harry himself examined silver unicorn horns at 21 gallons each, and minuscule, glittery black beetle eyes, 5 knuts a scoop. Outside the apothecary, Hagrid checked Harry's list again. Just your wand left. Oh yeah, and I still gotta get your birthday present. Harry felt himself go red. You don't have to. I know, but I don't have to. Tell you what, I'll get your animal. Not a toad. Toads went out of fashion years ago. You'd be laughed at. And I don't like cats. They make me sneeze. I'll get you an owl. All the kids want owls. They're dead useful, carrying your mail and everything. 20 minutes later, they left the Owl Emporium, which had been dark and full of rustling and flickering jewel-bright eyes. Harry now carried a large cage that held a beautiful snowy owl. Fast asleep with her head under her wings, he couldn't stop stammering his thanks, sounding just like Professor Quirrell. Don't mention it, said Hagrid gruffly. Don't expect you'd had a lot of presents from the Dursleys. Just Ollivanders left now. Only place for wands. Ollivanders, and you got the best wand yet. A magical wand. This is what Harry had been really looking forward to. All right, and that is where we're going to stop for today. But tomorrow, it's a shorter, the end of it, this chapter is a little short, but it's when he gets his wand. And then after tomorrow's reading, I am going to show you how to make your own wand. So you're going to want to tune in for that. I will see you then.